Today we're taking a look at what came out in Judges Guild Installment M from June of 1977. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. On today's video, we continue our look at the products of Judges Guild with their installment from June of 1977. This is called Installment M, and it focuses on the seaside town of Modron. Hope you enjoy the video. I've mentioned before that Judges Guild is one of my favorite companies that produced products for Dungeons & Dragons in the early days. One of the first companies to really lean in and produce products that could be used by dungeon masters in their campaigns. In 1977, they're continuing to put out these products by subscription about every other month. If you were a subscriber, $12 a year, I believe it was, and you would get a packet, and it would have just whatever they decided they could come up with that would be helpful for you as the referee or the judge or the dungeon master in your home campaign. Initially, they did not flesh things out very much, but they said in response to feedback they were getting from their subscribers that they would begin to put a lot more information in there so you would have a lot more detail to start with as a judge or a referee. And we'll see that we saw it last time, right, in Teagle Manor. It continues today in the city or town of Modron. So what did you get? Again, June 1977, Bob Bledsoe, principally responsible for the content. If you bought these things not by subscription, but you just sent in and paid for them, maybe about $3.50. Journal, you get Journal M, Booklet M, and some maps, and then a one-page monster compendium sheet. So here's the Judges Guild Journal. Now, this is, again, has switched from being a single-size legal piece of paper to 11.5 by 17 folded in half, and now instead of 4 pages, it's a total of 8, so 2 large sheets printed on both sides. And again, he has these different sections that he's sort of come up with to have the content. He does mention that Dungeons & Dragons has a new version coming out. He doesn't say it specifically, but it's the Holmes Basic box set that's coming out. He mentions that they've seen a copy, Games and Puzzles, Strategy and Tactics, and the Dragon Magazine have looked at these things. He also mentions that in June, the Dragon Magazine recommends Judges Guild to its readers and gives a reference to Tim Kask. Okay, so the first thing we have is an article. Oh, so I was going to mention that they also announced that TSR is releasing Monster and Treasure Assortment #1, just for some sort of time context. So the first thing is this article by Bob Bledsoe called The Minute Demography, and talks about giving more detailed information for fantasy role-playing campaigns and games, and the idea that you want to have a realistic economy in your game. And he goes into some of these details, which again, I think the realism is important. But so he's talking about how big the city is, how the economy, the movement of agriculture, sizes of different towns, and a little bit more information about the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. And just the general idea, as he says, that most people are not adventurers. Most people are farmers or merchants or craftspeople working in a small town and not usually traveling very far. He does want folks to know that the city-state of the Invincible Overlord is quite famous in his world and rumored to have vast wealth, probably even exaggerated. And so the city-state does attract people from all over his, I guess you'd say, world, to come there and to interact with them for economic reasons and to just see the city itself. The next thing he has is this guy, Tom Holsinger, and he was in the last version talking about the things you needed to flesh out to have a home campaign. He's back with two more of the things he said you really need to focus on. The first is religion, the justification for magic. He says in his view, and he says he thinks people have agreed on this, that magic is essentially taking energy from another space-time continuum through a gate that's created through the process of the casting of the spell. I probably never thought that much about, sort of like the physics or the metaphysics of how magic worked. I just sort of said, well, it just does, in my home campaign. So I never had to understand, I guess you'd say technically or mechanically how it was happening. I guess that's just me. He also talks about fleshing out gods, demigods, and demons, and talks about the fact that he thinks you should do that in your home campaign, rather either expand on or rather than the stuff that was put out by TSR itself. He gives you some ideas of this. He references Empire, the Petal Throne, which of course is a very well done, very thorough, thought out campaign world. And he says, there we have 10 gods, 5 good, 5 evil. They represent the key parts of existence. And I think if you were going to do your own pantheon, this is a good thing to think of here. What do they focus on? War, knowledge, life, death, and then in his case, women. I'm not sure about the women part, but I think these sort of really core concepts or things that affect life makes a lot of sense, and as a way to describe who your deities are going to be, and of course the tension there, between competing gods or demigods or forces, good and evil, and so forth, also makes a lot of sense. And he says, you can obviously, like I mentioned, you can expand on what's in the TSR products, or you can just have your own pantheon all by itself. Talks a little bit about alignment, how to think about alignment, how that impacts on your campaign world. I think it's an interesting, Bob Bledsoe made similar comments. The idea that if you're lawful and organized, you should probably have a better run town or society. Whereas if you're chaotic, the area where you live is going to be a very different type of environment, right? So giving some thought to, if not necessarily who all the people that live there who are in charge and imposing the way that town or area works, is an important thing to think about from an alignment point of view. Okay, and then he goes on into a lot of detail about different spells. He has some ideas about some spells that should work or shouldn't work, and one in particular he says is problematic, which I think is true, is wish. The idea that you can just undo things. And I know Gary and others in Lake Geneva early on struggled with how to control wishes, by the referee perhaps really being punishing in the wording and always looking for a way to twist a wish and so forth. I don't think that's very fun either. Maybe it's better if you put either limits on the spell or get rid of it altogether. The second thing that Tom wants to talk about are economics and technology. Again, figuring out how all that detail works in your campaign, making it more realistic. He said he tends to focus on, which is historically realistic, right? Putting people on coastlines and rivers and leaving most of the inner lands uninhabited, more chaotic wilderness type areas for exploration. That's how he lays it out. Talks about the need to understand what type of boats you have. Do you have maritime trade, which of course means you'll have piracy, et cetera, and so on. So again, lots and lots of detail there in the Judge's Journal. Really, probably longer articles, or probably longer articles than I've seen in a lot of fanzines that I've taken a look at. The Quest of Clanker Wildfoot by Kathy Bledsoe is just a little, I guess you'd say, narrative snippet from a campaign. At least it seems like a campaign. That's pretty well written and interesting. We've got a drawing here by Robert Bledsaw Jr. And then at the bottom is Languelin with a +1 wizard's sword. So I'm not sure what game they're playing with a wizard's sword, but in any event. He gives, for historical interest, he gives note here of thanks to Gary Adams, who did the Modron city map and many of the shop descriptions for Modron. And again, for Tom Halsinger, who did the lengthy article and some illustrations by Chris Zoller and Pixie Bledsoe. And you'll see, I'll show you what she did here in just a minute. He gives information here about the subscription process and how to renew your subscription, etc. And then here's our booty list, and we are now up to number 35 on the list, which is the stuff that comes here in the Modron. Here's the insert, I'll call it here, which is the Monster Compendium. And again, this is just a chart with key stats for the monsters from the Dungeons & Dragons, the original wood grain box set rules, so you don't have to go flipping through looking for stuff when you sit at the table. And he points out all this and more is available if you want to get the Judge's Shield, right, the Dungeon Master's Shield. And so here's the real key part, I think, of this installment, which is Modron. So here's to get a blue booklet folded in half, a couple of staples. And this art here at the top, I think I've got it. No, I didn't. I think I've got it. Well, anyway, the top, Pixie Bledsoe, I think his daughter, did the artwork here at the top of this water creature. And this is the original, and I actually, my copy I got from Jim Ward, so I know it's a very early copy. On the Assaim website, they'll show you here on the front page. There's a real thin line right there that kind of like something was on the printer or the copier that dimmed a little bit of the letters. And I'm guessing because this was Jim's copy, this is probably the very first printing, and then subsequent printings I think look like they're a little better done. There were multiple printings of this, so there's at least a couple different printings based on the first page and what I just mentioned. Times they ran it off like that, and then they printed it off on a larger size, which is like this, 8.5 by 11. And so this is the second printing, and the way you can, or second version, if you will, you can tell is the green shirt and the sort of purplish pink or fuchsia gloves and kilt or skirt on this guy is the second printing. And then the third printing, it's sort of more of an orange shirt. And then here is the fourth printing. Another thing you'll notice is the Bob Bledsoe, Gary Adams on the second version, the names aren't colored in, and in here on the third and fourth version, if you will, they are all the same. And there's some extra artwork in this. Kevin Siemba, I think I'm saying that correctly, has some artwork in here, and towards the end I'll throw up some of that artwork if you guys want to take a look at that later. It's only in, and that artwork's only in these the larger version. Okay, so here's Pixie's header, if you will, just to show you that art. So here's the first thing they have. This, again, seaside, you're going to be in the water if you do the adventure. It's called Sink or Swim. Bob's got rules for swimming, drowning, holding your breath, and your speed and your sinking rate depends on your armor. So like plate mail armor, you're going to be super. He has you add your strength and dexterity, and that number, the higher that is, the sort of faster you can swim, and the armor, of course, and then in a chart with the armor. And then the heavier the armor, the faster you sink. And then your constitution plus your intelligence determines your ability to avoid drowning. So you add those two numbers together, and then you take there's a chart, right, for your armor, and you roll a percentage once you run out of breath. For whatever reason, you can hold your breath a number of turns. You have a wisdom score. That's probably rounds, not turns, but in any event, based on wisdom, not sure why. Maybe because he just didn't want to use constitution twice. NPCs, he says, have a 50% chance how to know how to swim, 40 for dwarves, 30 for hobbits. Elves are the same as humans. And so anyways, he's got these rules. And then he also has a D6 to get the direction of the current in the water if you're not standing at the edge of a beach. And then the force of that, right? Calm, light, strong, or bad. And bad could be a storm, a whirlpool, a tsunami, or a spout that's sort of shooting you up into the air. So all kinds of interesting stuff there to flesh out some added rules if you're going to find yourself on the seaside. Okay, so the first thing we have here is some information. He's got the key to his map, his hex map. He's got information about Modron, the goddess of rivers, for whom the town is named. And she's obviously can come on land, but only for short periods of time. And then you've got this sea hag here who will show up again in a minute, and her name is Esdelia. She usually keeps her head covered, but if she pulls it off, you see her face. You got to save versus fear. So the brief background here is 500 years ago, Modron was a thriving port city. They worshipped the river goddess Modron, and so over time, it became a very vibrant port city. Then it got invaded by some orcs, and that sort of obviously messed everything up, and it just sort of died off. More recently, people have come back and tried to revitalize the town and drive off the orcs, and that's sort of where you guys come into the campaign. So first, you're going to get this. I'll get myself out of the way. You're going to have this map of the general area, and a couple of things I want to show you. Up here in the top right, that's the town of Modron. And then you've got this temple that you're looking for that's now underwater. And then there's like a cave over here, and there's a bunch of other stuff, quicksand and seaweed areas, et cetera, for the characters to explore. Okay, so here you have the information that's in this booklet. It really mostly focuses on the town of Modron and not so much the actual adventure that you can get into around the area. So we have this benevolent character. He said each time now he's sort of giving you a key NPC for the DM to play with. Here's Sunaboot, the pirate, who's neutral, so he could be, he could be an ally of the party, he can be an adversary. It just depends on how that's gonna go down. He's got some interesting NPCs from around the area that he gives you some detailed information about. And then he has some encounters here in areas around some different streets, different areas around outside the town. It says if you're on this area, and each one has its own particular role. Chance of being mugged, chance of seeing an assassin in the act, being run over by a wagon, getting caught up in the middle of a street brawl, attacked by bandits, etc. He gives you the key statistics for Anoethan, the patriarch king of the city of Modron, so you may have a chance to meet him. Here's the player's map, and you'll see this is from the SAM website. It's got this person has gone through and written in the numbers of what the different encounters were here. And then here, of course, is the judge's map. I'll get myself out of the way, and you can see the numbers that are written in there. It's larger. It has more detail about what's in most of these. It has more detail about what's in most of these encounters. And here you see there's several pages of the booklet go through here and spell out a decent amount of information about each of the little places that you could encounter here in the city of Modron, right? Innkeepers, merchants, etc. And then here on the back of this, we get some more charts. Sharks and sea monsters, and he has obviously a chance of blood will attack things, but then lakes, rivers, deep water, and you roll typical things like different types of sharks you might encounter in there. And then if you're deeper water, sea monsters you could encounter like giant squids, octopuses, giant crabs, etc. And then he has precious pearls, and the value of a pearl's function of color, size, shape, and luster. And so he gives you a chart here where you roll D100 for the color, value, size, shape, and luster, and then you sort of work that together to get an ultimate value. And then he has underwater encounter tables with he says 10% chance this whatever it is will come, try and attack. Barracuda, dolphins, sunfish, marlin, seahorses, giant frogs, crocodiles, man-of-war, squids, or sea monsters. And then more things like stingrays, devils, lanternfish, moray, eels, sea bass, porcupine, puffers, goosefish, hagfish, sea turtles, clams, etc. Okay, so now let's take a look at the art that comes in the later printings. And as I mentioned, Kevin Ciambietta, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, apologies, did a decent amount of art, as well as a couple of other folks. Pixie, we know, did some art in the original one, and then Ed Perry and Ken Simpson. So I'm not sure who did this. I'll get myself out of the way. I'm not sure who did this art here, sort of like the walled town. And then we have this. This is Modron, the goddess, showing up here. And then we've got a mermaid underneath of the docks. Some unfortunate people who didn't make it out of the adventure, and then just a black and white illustration looking down a city street. And then here's some more Kevin's art. We've got this merman. I'm pretty sure that's what that's supposed to be. And this lady who's, I'm going to assume, a priestess of some sort, casting a spell out on the rock among the water. Full color, obviously, or maybe it's 3-color printing. I forget. Maybe that's what someone told me they did. And here's a boat. Obviously, he had a bad random encounter roll, and he's in the middle of, looks like a typhoon or a whirlpool. And then we've got these guys who are fighting back. It looks like they're fighting to me against seaweed, but maybe that's supposed to be some type of a monster in there. I like the one guy's up on the edge right there with his peg leg, and he's trying to stab it. The other guy looks pretty darn calm, just sitting there with his awesome mustache, watching what his friend is doing. So that is it for Installment M from 1977. And we'll be back next time with a look at Installment N. These go on for a little while like this. And we'll get some more interesting products put out by Judges Guild. And I think at some point I'll go back and do some of the numbering for those who are curious about that. And there are a couple of things that weren't put out as an installment. Most importantly, the really large original maps of the city-state, and then the booklet that told you all the detail about the city-state comes later, was never put out as part of an installment. It was only available if you bought it on its own. And that went through a number of iterations through the years, one of their key core products, I would say. So I hope you all are enjoying our look at Judges Guild's products. Hope you're enjoying the channel, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have some friends who might enjoy our videos, please send them our way. Hopefully they will be subscribers as well. And until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.